Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
In the mist-shrouded highlands of Ethiopia, where ancient chants still rise like incense into the crystalline skies and stone churches cling to cliff sides as if carved by the hands of angels, a prophecy lingers, one of Messiah, not from Rome or Jerusalem, but from Africa. This Messiah is not merely a religious savior, but a symbol of historical reckoning, spiritual sovereignty, and Afrocentric reawakening. For centuries, whispers of this Ethiopian Messiah have moved quietly through underground circles of the Rastafari movement, through the oral traditions of the Beta Israel, and the sacred texts of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, a church far older than most in Western Christendom. And while the Vatican City, clad in marble splendor and papal grandeur, seems the unshakable seed of global Christianity, history suggests there is unease behind its gilded walls. It is a tension centuries in the making, theological, political, and symbolic, between the imperial vestiges of Western Christendom and the deep prophetic currents of Africa's ancient Christian tradition. At the heart of this tension lies Ethiopia, a land where Christianity predates the Roman Empire's adoption of the faith, where kings were once crowned elect of God, and where a belief persists that redemption may rise from the very place empires sought to erase. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church is not a footnote in Christian history, but one of its pillars. Ethiopia was among the first nations to adopt Christianity as a state religion in the 4th century CE, under King Ezana of Axum, decades before Constantine the Great convened the Council of Nicaea. This ancient church preserved rites, liturgies, and apocalyptic texts lost to most of the Western world. It venerates the Ark of the Covenant, said to reside in the Church of St. Mary of Zion in Axum, and traces its priestly line back to the union of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. This theological independence has long been a point of divergence between Ethiopia and Rome. While the Vatican emphasized the Petrine supremacy of the Pope, Ethiopian Christianity held fast to its own interpretations, liturgical language, Guizi, and apostolic traditions rooted in Judaic heritage. The fear that lingers in Vatican silence is not merely doctrinal, it is symbolic. The Ethiopian Church defies the narrative of Western Christian supremacy. It represents a continuity of belief that bypasses the Roman legacy, a living testament to a Christianity that predates and outlasts empire. In the 20th century, this latent theological independence exploded into global consciousness with the coronation of Haile Selassie I in 1930. Crowned with the titles King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and Conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah, Selassie's lineage was declared to stretch back to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, a direct messianic claim. For many in the West Indies and African diaspora, disillusioned with colonial Christianity, Selassie emerged as the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. The Rastafari movement, born in Jamaica but drawing heavily from Ethiopian eschatology, proclaimed him the returned Christ, the Black Messiah who would overturn Babylon, symbolic of Western oppression, and restore divine order from Zion, not the Jerusalem of Israel, but the Ethiopian highlands. Though Selassie himself denied divinity, the power of his symbolism was irreversible. The idea of an Ethiopian Messiah was now global and radically threatening to the established religious order. For a Vatican long invested in the idea of spiritual authority flowing from Rome, the emergence of a Black Messiah from Africa, crowned in ancient rites, venerated in biblical terms, and untouched by Roman doctrine, posed a profound theological and symbolic challenge. Officially, the Vatican has maintained diplomatic relations with Ethiopia for decades and has never overtly condemned the theology surrounding Haile Selassie or the Ethiopian messianic narrative. Yet this silence speaks volumes. The Vatican has historically responded decisively to movements it considers heretical or schismatic, from the Cathars to liberation theology, and its restraint here suggests a complex strategic calculus. One explanation is that direct confrontation would only validate the Rastafari and Ethiopian claims. To acknowledge the theological challenge posed by a Black Messiah, rooted in a continuous, independent Christian tradition, will be to expose the colonial fault lines in the Church's own history. More subtly, it would call into question the Eurocentric framing of Christianity that Rome has propagated for centuries. Instead, the Vatican has opted for ecumenical diplomacy, engaging cautiously with the Ethiopian Church while avoiding the messianic undertones that surround it. Behind this diplomacy, however, lies an unspoken acknowledgement that the rise of an Ethiopian Messiah reorients the axis of Christian authority, from west to east, from Rome to Axum, from white to black. The broader fear isn't limited to a single figure. The return of the Ethiopian Messiah is a metaphor for the decolonization of theology itself. Afrocentric thinkers and theologians have increasingly challenged the Western monopoly on religious interpretation, highlighting the African origins of early Christianity, the Black presence in the Bible, and the erasure of non-European Christian histories. In this context, the Ethiopian Messiah represents not just spiritual salvation but historical justice. It is a reclamation of a Christianity that is older than Rome, more inclusive than dogma, and rooted in the lived experience of colonized peoples. Such a vision threatens the institutional church's control over narrative, doctrine, and identity. The fear deepens when seen through apocalyptic lenses. Revelation speaks of a time when Babylon falls and Zion rises, when the last becomes first, and when the true Ark of the Covenant is revealed. In the Ethiopian prophetic tradition, especially among Rastafarians, these events are not future allegories but unfolding realities. Ethiopia's claim to possess the Ark, combined with its prophetic royal lineage, positions it as not just a spiritual anomaly but a theological time bomb. If Zion is in Ethiopia, and the Messiah returns not as a white-robed figure from the skies but as a black king from the highlands, the entire cosmology of Western Christianity is inverted. It is in this prophetic reversal, the humbling of Rome, the rise of Africa, and the return of divine sovereignty, that the Vatican's quiet fear resides. The idea that the Vatican fears the return of the Ethiopian Messiah is not about a literal man in robes marching on Rome, but about something deeper, a spiritual and historical reckoning. It is the fear that the stories told for centuries, of who is divine, who is chosen, who leads, and who follows, may not only be wrong but dangerously incomplete. Ethiopia stands as a reminder that Christianity is not European by birth, that divine kingship is not the sole province of the West, and that redemption may rise from the very margins imperial theology once ignored. The Vatican may not fear a man, but it fears what he represents: a new center, a new narrative, and perhaps a new kingdom.